My name's Georgie and I'm the 5K Away operational manager. So we're just going to do a little bit of background to start with, and then we'll introduce everyone else as well. So when the COVID pandemic began, we had to cancel all our 5K Away group meetups, probably as you all know. And we all knew that we needed to think of a way to support and inspire our community. So myself, Gemma and Lucy, our 5K Away co-founders, have been running these Q&As since the first lockdown back in March last year. And we've had some amazing guests on the way, from Steve Bland from Yumi and the Big C, Professor Anna Campbell, who founded Cancer Rehab Instructor Course, Jodie Jones, who swam the channel on Chemo, Luke Granville-Shaw, who's currently cycling from Bristol to Beijing with stage 4 cancer, and that's to name but a few. We've done a lot. We've really enjoyed these Q&As, so we're so grateful to have these brilliant guests join us, and we believe that these conversations are truly valuable and important to share. Hopefully you'll agree and you've enjoyed listening to them, and hopefully learned something or been inspired somehow. We now have our own 5K Away YouTube channel, and that's been a brilliant resource to point people towards. However, we know that for everyone, not YouTube isn't the best medium. So hopefully now we're going to be introducing our new podcast, Move Against Cancer podcast. We're still going to, which we're really excited about. We're still going to be putting our recordings on YouTube and on our website. So if that's your preferred way of watching, they'll still be on there. And we'll share our podcast through Facebook and social media from the next time onwards, rather than having Facebook Lives.
So we're not going to lie, we're a bit nervous about this. It's all very new to us, and there's no point pretending that we're not somewhat apprehensive. But if I've learned anything over the last few years, it's that it's always better to give something a go than to sit at home and wonder what if. So our aim with Move Against Cancer is to create a podcast that supports and inspires people to move, to exercise, and to live an active and fulfilling life despite a cancer diagnosis. We'll be sharing the stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. We know that many people are scared to stay active during cancer treatment. We know that for many, cancer can take away the hope that comes from dreaming of a future. And we know that many people at diagnosis feel very isolated and lonely. So we really hope that by sharing the stories of others finding their own way through cancer, our Move Against Cancer podcast will provide hope, support, and a sense of empowerment to anyone living with or after a cancer diagnosis.
So we'd be really grateful if you could tell your friends about this, be our advocates, help us by telling people that you know that would find this useful and interesting. To us, even if just one person starts to exercise and enjoys it and feels the benefits of it when living with or beyond cancer, then we'll be doing something right. Fingers crossed. If you have any ideas, suggestions or topics or anything you'd like to hear us discuss, then please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much to everyone who's supported us to get this far. As always, we welcome any comments to help us make Move Against Cancer as valuable and as empowering as possible. So for today's guest, we're delighted to be chatting to Kevin Webber. Hi, Kevin.
Hi there.
Hi, I'll just introduce you in your own words that you sent over to me. Kevin Webber is just an ordinary guy. We're going to go into that to prove probably that he's not, but who likes plodding. He's married, he's got 3 kids, 2 cats living in Ewell. I've not said that right, have I? Ewell? Eel, there we go, sorry. South London, right?
Sort of, yeah, Epsom.
Epsom, there we go. Having run many half marathons and 10Ks in his 20s, and then after a 15-year injury break before doing some marathons in his 40s, he was then given some devastating news that spurred him on to make the most of life every day. Hear what knocked him sideways and how he unusually behaved for someone given such a short prognosis. Kevin's story from marathons on Chemo, countless ultra marathons all around the world, to most recently a running streak of over a year, including 3 marathons in 44 hours and with COVID. This may encourage you to never cancel a run because of a bit of rain or if it's cold ever again.
Welcome, Kevin. So I was listening to you chatting on a running podcast last night, and I was chuntering to myself, leaving the hospital in the dark with the rain and the wind, and it was a headwind. And I started listening to you, and it certainly helped me shift my mindset to one of grumbling to one of gratitude. Tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, so I am an ordinary person insofar as I was never great at anything. You know, I'm average. I'm an average person, I suppose. I'm average life. You know, married, kids, pets, that sort of stuff. And I worked for NatWest. I've worked for them now for 38 years, and you know, I was a successful, I suppose, bank manager. Enjoyed what I did. Enjoyed being at home. I played rugby in my 20s at a low level, but got injured playing rugby, and that's what stopped me running. You know, I only ran because the rugby club I played for organised a half marathon, and they said you should run it. So I ran my first half marathon without any training at all. But I was young. I was probably 20 years old. I did it in 1:59 and about 44 seconds. So I remember being quite chuffed that I did under 2 hours, and then got the bug. And I did what you had to do in those days. There was no internet, so I bought a magazine and got into running. And I ran loads and loads of half marathons and 10Ks. But every time I finished a half marathon, I always thought, how does anyone run a marathon? Because I was absolutely shattered. I had nothing left in the tank. And I had this enormous respect for anyone that could run a marathon. Of course, in those days, we're talking about 1987 sort of time, there weren't many people that were running marathons anyway. There weren't that many races. And the people who did run 10Ks and half marathons, kind of, even they were looked at as being a bit weird. And 5Ks didn't really exist. No one really ran a 5K. There weren't many 5K races. I think people thought, kind of, what's the point of paying money to enter a 5K? It's over and done with too quickly if you're a sort of a fun runner. And there weren't many charity runs in those days either. You know, they weren't organising their own events. So that's what I did. And when I got injured, one rugby match playing, both my calf muscles tore in a scrum, and that was it. And I look back now, and I kind of regret a bit of how I treated my injury, and that will come out a bit later on with cancer, because it taught me something. And what I didn't do was the right things. So I still tried to run, and I got injured again, and I tried to run and I got injured again. And, you know, I'd run 3K, and I think, I fixed it, and then 3.5K, my calf muscle would tear again. And what I should have done is gone to a physio. And I didn't do that. And so I spent 15 years not running, and, you know, I enjoyed life, but I look back and the things I should have been doing, I didn't do. So, so I didn't run. And then sadly, one of my wife's friends died when she was 40. And on the day of the funeral, my wife said to me, you know, you always said you wanted to run a marathon, but never did. You should go and try and do one. So I thought about it. I thought, well, actually, yeah, why not? And so I went and saw a physio, and at last, and he basically proved that I was running like a policeman at 10 to 2. My feet were sort of sticking out sideways. And because of that, the further I ran, the more I was pulling my calf muscles in the wrong direction. So he had me a lot of exercise, but the one that he had me on was on a cross trainer, and he had my feet jammed in a cross trainer because that forces you to have your feet facing forwards. And I wasn't allowed to run. I just had to go on there for 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day, an hour a day. And I was doing an hour a day of a cross trainer, trying to retrain my legs or my feet to point forwards rather than at 10 to 2. And eventually that worked. And so after about 6 months, my left foot was dead straight forwards, and my right foot was probably, you know, 1 o'clock rather than 2 o'clock, but it was better. And of course now I'm ready for the marathon world, ready to unleash myself. And it was, I think, about April time. And of course, I think, I'll run the London Marathon then. Of course, you can't get an London Marathon at short notice. And I scoured a running magazine, and I found a race called the Marathon in Orpington in Kent. And I thought, that'll do, great, that's it, I'm in there. And all my friends said, Kev, the crowds will keep you going, it'll be fantastic. And I got down there, it was 2 13.1 mile laps of suburbia, and there were 80 of us in the race. There were no crowds. There was a water station at 6.5 miles. So basically, you got water at 6.5 miles, 13 miles, and 19 miles, and that was it. I had no idea how to run a marathon, so I had no gels, no nothing. And I remember the first lap really fast in like 1:40. I was thinking, great, half marathon in 1:40. You know, Kev, you're fit, we're going to do this. I died about 3 miles later. I walked and crawled, and if someone had driven past in a car and said, Kev, do you want a lift, I would have got in that car. I didn't know how to dig deep at all, but I somehow managed to get to the finish line. I think I did it in about 4:18. And when you think how fast I did the first half, you know, that just shows how much I've blown the second half. But I now had the bug. So I ran a couple more marathons. I did London a couple of times. Brighton, one of my favourite marathons, did Brighton a few times. And, you know, not for the time, just because I love the experience and the training, and just an excuse to get out a couple of times a week and run. And in 2014, right, yeah, 2014, I did the Brighton Marathon for, I think, the third time. And it was the only time I ever broke 4 hours. I did it in 3:48 and I was dead chuffed that it was great. And I had loads in the tank. I could have gone much faster. But I was so keen not to walk that I paced myself too well almost and did that. So I was absolutely fine. And then I did a race from London to Brighton. So it was 100K. And it actually goes past my front door. I live in suburbia in Epsom. And I remember one year thinking, what do you feel running past my front door for? And so I found out what it was. And I thought, oh, I'll do that. So my friend Jim and I, we did London to Brighton. It took me 15 hours. Again, tactically naive. Stopped too long at stations. I ran up hills at the start, ate the wrong things. Awful. But we finished at Brighton Racecourse. It was great. And we finished in the dark. And our kids joined us and they ran up the last 100 yards with us, which was brilliant. You know, the kids were quite young then. So that was a really good finish. And so I entered the Brighton Marathon again for the following year, because you can do that. And I entered a race a bit further, 120K. So this is
120K.
120K. Okay. Yeah, it's called the Wall. It's Hadrian's
You're
Wall.
a bit of a nutter.
Just a bit.
But I've always been someone actually that likes to look forward to something. Yeah. And I think that's one of the key, again, a real key message for people is you need to find something to look forward to every day. And to me, you know, I had a rat race kind of job in a bank. I enjoyed my job, but I needed to have a marathon to look forward to next year. I needed to have a bigger race to look forward to. So they were booked, you know, a year in advance. So I had a year of training and, again, an excuse to go out a couple of times a week and run. And maybe be slightly healthier in my diet and things as well. But then what I didn't know was things were about to change. So I was on holiday with my family. We went to, we were very lucky, went to Disney. And I always call it my end of innocence holiday, because, you know, we are in Disney, Mickey Mouse. You know, there's a great photograph of myself, my 3 kids, my wife, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger, you know, and it's kind of that everything was brilliant. You know, we were children again. But whilst I was there, I started getting up in the night for a wee. And I came home and that was carrying on still. Get up a couple of times a night and I couldn't work out why. At the same time, I felt like I was sitting on a golf ball. 5 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow, not at all for 2 days, in an hour the next day. So no pattern to it. And finally, without trying to be rude, when I was having relations with my wife, everything felt normal. But
you can say the sex words. It's
well, if it's my wife, I say, well, I was making love in that case with my wife. Everything felt normal, but at the end, nothing came out the end at the end. And those 3 things happened very quickly within the space of about a month. And I did what most men don't do. I think most men are scared of doctors. I went to the doctors. And in the doctors, we had a chat about the 3 things, and I had no idea, you know, what it might be. I thought maybe some sort of urine infection or something. And it was the first of my many doctors' special handshakes, I call them. And note to anyone, by the way, avoid doctors with chubby fingers and sovereign rings. But anyway.
So just for anyone who hasn't worked out, a special handshake, I'm assuming is a rectal examination.
It is indeed a rectal examination.
Just to clarify.
You know, I lived my life until that moment, considering that I would die at a ripe old age and my backside would have been a one-way street for all of its life. And suddenly it was about to become a 2-lane superhighway, you know, both ways. Anyway.
Great way to describe it.
And, you know, but it's not embarrassing. To me, it's just what you know, had to be done. Yeah. And I also had a blood test. A blood test is called for this thing, it's called a Psa test. And he explained it looked for certain things in my body. And he said that if it's a high score, it might indicate you've got prostate cancer. Now, my father had prostate cancer. It was curable. and at the peak his score was 12. So anyway, I went away, waited for the results, came back a week later, sat down, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you've probably got prostate cancer because your score is 342, which is, you know, there are higher scores, but that's pretty high." And that then started probably the worst 2 months of my life, because from that it went to more special handshakes, scans, a biopsy, which, you know, I wouldn't wish on anybody. And you know, that you have to go through these things. I had scans with radioactive traces, bone scans. Said the biopsy was basically firing 18 needles through my bowel wall into my prostate and ripping out a bit 18 times. Not at all comfortable. And then on the 6th of November, I think it was, might have been the 8th, one of those 2 days anyway, November, I sat with a doctor, a different doctor I hadn't met before, with my wife. I remember walking into the room, and there was a Macmillan nurse there and another guy and the doctor. And I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. You know, I knew by now I probably had prostate cancer, but for most men, if you go to the doctors on first symptoms, it's curable. So, you know, you can be cured, and I think 82% of men are cured. So I assumed I was in the 82% bit. I met a guy at work that had it as well, and he was in the 82% bit. I sat down with him, and he looked at my results and said, "I'm sorry, it can't get much worse. It spread to other parts of your body already, so it's what they call metastatic prostate cancer." And he said, "You know, you might only live 2 years."
Did he actually say that in that conversation?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I asked him, because he's just saying, "Oh, it's spread. You know, it's a score of 9 or 10. 10's the worst. 9 or 10. Oh, we call it 9. Could be 10. Okay, great." And so I had a lot of cancer, and it was fast growing. And the scans indicated it was also in my chest, possibly on my neck, and in my pelvis, outside of my prostate. And yeah, you said, "Oh, you know, 2 to 10 days old. If you're lucky, 3 to 4. Don't think 10." You said he had on, actually, don't think 10. You know, maybe 2. And actually, it's interesting. People, when you hear that, you think, "Oh, that's a terrible thing to say." Actually, that was the best thing he could have said to me. Not at the time. My wife and I burst into tears. You know, the world had ended. But actually, it was the best thing he could have said to me, because it was a wake-up call. It was the first of a few epiphanies, because I suddenly realised that life was going to be not what I expected it to be. And I know of men, sadly, who have died within 3 months of diagnosis. So actually, when he said 2 years, he was only guessing. You know, he didn't know. So, you know, he was giving me potentially what he thought was the worst case scenario, but I now know the worst case scenario can be 3 months. So anyway, I affectionately call him Dr. Death, because he was a urologist, and urologists are surgeons. And without being rude to urologists, the way that they all operate, it seems to be, so I've met a few now, if they can't cut it out, they can't help you. And that's basically it. So then I saw an oncologist, so we called him the zapper, opposed to the cutter. And he's different. He's the magician. He's the one that's got all the whiz-bang stuff, the drugs, and in very simple terms. And he said, "Well, you know, we might be able to do some things. You're quite young." I was 49 years old. He said, "You're quite young, prostate cancer, you're quite healthy. Might be able to do a few bits for you. You know, let me have a think about it and come back." And so anyway, so I came back a couple of days later. And in the meantime, I had to tell my dad. My dad at the time was about 85. And it's never good telling your father that you're probably going to die before him, because, you know, the deal is when you have kids that you die before your kids do. And I had to tell my kids. And at the time, they were 16, 14 and 9. And that was pretty awful. Lots of tears.
What did you tell them, Kevin?
So I'd read some stuff, and it makes perfect sense. It said you tell them all together, no matter how old they are. You tell them all together, and so they all hear the same thing at the same time. Because the worst thing you can do is give any one of your family the thought that they take preference over the other. Or if they hear you say one thing and you say it different the other time, they'll only talk anyway. So they get the same consistent message at the same time. There's no favourites. There's no pulling any punches. To be fair, I didn't actually say I was going to die in 2 years. What I said was it was incurable. And my daughter, 16, burst into tears. Then my son did, Ben, 14. And I think Ollie at the time cried because everyone else was crying. I don't think he really understood what it all meant. But then once we'd had a chat about it, and I said, look, I'm okay today though. I said, let's go and play football. And that was really important. We went to the park and we all played football because I wanted to prove to them that just because you have a rubbish thing happen in your life, it doesn't stop there. You know, you can choose to be a victim or you can choose to carry on. And it was really important for me that they understood I was choosing to carry on. And I've had lots of conversations with them since about they never use me as an excuse to give up. I'm the excuse to go again. I'm the excuse to not mess around. I'm the excuse to try harder. Not because I wanted to show them through my own actions, that's what you do. Anyway, so saw the doctor again and he said, right, we're going to give you chemotherapy. And at the time, that wasn't common for prostate cancer to have early chemotherapy. So I was having chemotherapy, then radiotherapy, which equally wasn't common for incurable prostate cancer at that time. And he said, we'll see how it goes. And I started on some hormone drugs. They take away your testosterone because testosterone is what initially feeds prostate cancer. So I quite quickly became like a woman. I know it sounds strange, but so I started to have the attributes that ladies have. So I now understand why, for example, it's hard for ladies to build muscle. Without testosterone, it's very hard to build muscle. I started getting hot flushes. I started growing man boobs. I started getting, I suppose, moodier. Not that I realised that, but I probably did. You know, and this was the journey of the drugs I'm on. And then I started.
Sorry, carry on.
So I was on these drugs to take away my testosterone. Initially, there were tablets, but then they were a stomach injection every 3 months. So I get a big pellet put into my stomach. It's a massive needle, horrible thing, no anaesthetic or anything. Sticks this pellet in my stomach that then dissolves over the next 3 months and takes away my testosterone. And I remember going for a run about the 5th, 6th of January. I ran 20 miles because by then I'm still running a long way.
Was this before treatment or after? Before treatment.
Before treatment. And I remember thinking this might be the last time I ever run because I'm going to start chemo in 3 days' time. And, you know, I hadn't heard a good word said about chemo. Everyone just said it's rubbish, you know, all the standard stuff. And I was ready to be a victim. I was ready to be another cancer chemo victim, feeling sorry for myself. And I hadn't had a day off sick from work for years. Like, I think I might have 1 or 2 days off in like 15 years at work. And I decided that I was going to have some time off the chemo. I wasn't going to try and battle in and be a martyr because if I only felt good 1 day a month, I'm, you know, sorry if I'm going to spend that 1 good day a month at work. And I'm very lucky that the bank paid me still when I was off sick. So I then had my first chemo session on the 13th of January 2015. And, you know, it's exactly like everyone tells you. You sit in a room, there were 5 other people there, you see this bag of poison come out, everyone else has got bags of poison and going to different parts because they didn't all have prostate cancer. And no one smiles. It's a dead, lifeless, miserable, horrible place. And even, you know, and I love nurses, but even the nurses didn't, you know, no one was trying to make it a happy place. It just was grim. My wife was with me, and I've always, ever since I can remember, I've had 3 phobias actually. Number 1 is my eyes. I hate the thought of anything ever touching my eyes. If I ever had to wear glasses, I couldn't wear contact lenses. Number 2 was ever having anything shoved down my old fella. Oof, never had that still, but I know that's, sadly, I think that's to come at some stage of my cancer, but I'm still, touch wood, managed to avoid that. And number 3 is having a cannula in my hand. Okay. And I didn't want to have a cannula in my hand or any part of my body, and they stuck a cannula in. And I remember the whole hour of chemo just wanting to pull the thing out. It was like an itch I wanted to scratch and I couldn't do it, and just trying to cover it up and put things over so I couldn't see it. And you can't feel it. I mean, it's rubbish, you know. But in my head, it was this massive thing.
And I guess at the start, Kevin, you're adjusting to all the physical changes as well as the psychological aspect of being told you've got an incurable cancer. So,
oh yeah. I mean, things like you can never have sex again. You know, one of the things with prostate cancer, when it's advanced, when you start on these drugs, That's it. You lose your urge, you lose your ability. You know, they actually call it chemical castration. What they used to do in the old days before they used to actually chop your testicles off. They don't do that so much now. They just give you the drugs, but have exactly the same effect. And you know, whilst I've never been a big macho man. Part of what makes me a man is not having man boobs, is not having hot flushes, is having. I used to have a hairy chest and stuff. Not that I liked it, but that's what men have. And you know, having the ability to have sex and stuff is what kind of mentally, physically makes you a man.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all taken away. And one of the horrible things about cancer is that as soon as they tell you that you have a short prognosis, your ability to dream disappears. So, and what I mean by that is, we all have dreams. If you asked anybody what their dreams are, it's like, well, what are you going to do in years to come? Well, actually, and so in my case, I dreamt about being a granddad. I dreamt about giving my daughter away, retiring, driving around Europe in a camper van with my wife. I like watching AFC Wimbledon. Watching AFC Wimbledon win the Champions League, never going to happen.
Dream on.
But, you know, exactly, it was a dream. You know, but all these dreams that might have happened suddenly is 2 years. Well, hold on, my daughter's 16. It's unlikely, possible, but unlikely she's going to get married and have kids. She certainly won't graduate from university by 18. So all those dreams just crash, and you have nothing to look forward to. Everything's gone. You know, I had this vision of a year of horrible treatment. And then a year of dying, because I had this 2-year date with Destiny, and the first year didn't sound much fun. The second year sounded even worse. So, you know, what's the point? You know, it really was, what's the point? So I remember I came out of chemo and I behaved like a victim. I behaved just like I thought I had to behave. And I remember getting out the car and shuffling up the driveway at home, collapsing into an armchair at my house, and then my wife bringing me dinner on a tray, sitting there feeling miserable and glum. You know, the demise had started, going to bed early, and then trying to sleep but failing, because of course when you have chemo they fill you with steroids, and the steroids are having quadruple espressos, so there's no chance of any sleep. So I was lying there all night crying. You know, I must have cried so many times.
And do you think that there was an element of that was because that was the expectation that you had been given as to how someone should behave when they were given an incurable diagnosis and having treatment? Absolutely.
I was, you know, no one ever, these things didn't exist, this kind of podcast didn't exist, or if it did, I never found them. You know, doctors never, you know, Prostate Cancer UK, they are fantastic. They have a forum with loads of people on who can tell you all sorts about prostate cancer and their different experiences. And yet no one ever asked me to go there. The doctor never suggested it. The oncologist never suggested it. I had to find it myself, thank heavens for the internet. And yet the internet's terrible, because you're on Dr. Google and that will tell you all the worst things that happen. So I would implore anyone on, if they ever worry about cancer, find the charity site for the cancer you have. Or if you can't find one, Cancer Research UK or Macmillan, because they all have very good help desk, but clearly the best one is one for your specific charity, your cancer rather. So anyway, so I'm behaving like I thought I should behave, and the next morning I wake up, because I must have fallen asleep or dozed, and I get up. I remember getting out of bed and looking out the window, and it was raining. It was January and it was cold. And I said to my wife, I'm going for a run. And she said, well, but you can't. And I said, well, why not? I said, the doctor didn't tell me I couldn't. Well, you never asked him. It's not my fault, you know. So I'm going for a run. So I put my gear on. I didn't feel very well, by the way, I have to say. But I thought, I'm going to go for a run. Had a load more steroids. And off I went. And bear in mind, I ran 20 miles quite easily on Sunday. This is now Wednesday, and I managed 3. I managed 3 miles. I ran to my local park, which is about half a mile away. I did about 6 laps of it and came back. It took me about 40 minutes, so 20-minute miles. No, less than that, 12-minute miles. So okay, I suppose, but nowhere near as fast as I was. And
How did it make you feel?
Well, physically, I felt sick and absolutely shattered. I couldn't have run another step. Mentally, though, I suddenly realised that cancer's taking away all these dreams it's stolen from me, but it hasn't taken away my ability to run. Because running is going outside, in my opinion, and getting both feet in the air at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. No more, no less. That's it. Not how far, not how fast, just going out. And actually, my world has changed since then, insofar as I even say walking. Just getting outside and being in control of a walk around the block or whatever is all you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And suddenly, whereas before I had no interest in anything. What's the point? Because it has no use to my life. Suddenly I was looking at magazines again. I was looking at websites about nutrition and running kit, and so I could buy a new pair of trainers because I might use them. Excuse me. I might use them. So fantastic. And so suddenly I was, looking forward to all these things. I could run, 3 miles. That's good enough for me.
Can I just ask? I just
Yeah.
wanted to ask, did you ever feel like you had to ask permission from your doctor or from your medical team to do that? Or did you just, like, once you'd done it, you'd done it? How did you feel about that?
Well, once I'd done it, I'd done it. But then the next appointment with the doctor, I said, look, we're now talking end of January, session 2 of chemo. I think session 2 of chemo. The first one had knocked me back too much, so I had to change the dose. And I said to him, look, I entered the Brighton Marathon a year ago. It's on week 13 of chemo. How do you feel about it? And he looked at me and said, no, people don't run marathons on your chemo with your cancer. And I said, well, why? He said, just go and find me someone. He said, you find me someone with prostate cancer that's spread, that's run a marathon before. And I thought, okay. So I went home and Googled, and I couldn't find anyone. I know people have run marathons on chemo, but I couldn't find someone who's run with prostate cancer a marathon on chemo. And so I spoke to him again, because I was seeing him every 3 days at the time. And he said, I said, but I really want to do it. And he said, look, I tell you what, if you can train for it, you can do it. So he said, and I think he thought...
Challenge accepted.
Exactly. But I think he thought I wouldn't be able to train for it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I went out, and I was going out every other day, trying to run a bit further. So, but my running had changed. So now I had a backpack, and I had a change of clothes, some food, a big bit of cardboard with my name and address and phone number on it, my mobile phone. So even though I was only running 4 miles, I was looking like I was going to run further. And I used to run about half a mile from home and then run basically a lap of my house. So I was never more than half a mile from home. And then I got a bit braver and I ran a bit further, and I was running 6 miles, 7 miles. Now, I told my friend Jim, who I'd been running with before, we'd done London to Brighton together, and he'd entered the Brighton Marathon as well with me. And I remember telling Jim I had cancer, and we both burst into tears on a run. So we're going back now in time a bit. Now we're going back to November. I went for a run with Jim, and we started running. I said, Jim, I've got something to tell you. And I told him, and we just both makes me upset now, actually. We just both sobbed like babies, And Jim had never beaten a 4-hour marathon. So Jim had set Brighton as his target to beat a 4-hour marathon. So Jim and I were going out training together, but he was already giving up the speed work to just stay with me on the longer runs. And sometimes I remember my own going out, winter time, miserable and cold. I remember one day, just in tears, because it's just always emotional in those days. And I was about 7 miles into a 10-mile run, just sobbing. And then I learned about visualization, which I never thought about before. And I suddenly visualized, because I've done Brighton Marathon before, what it would be like to cross the line with cancer. And suddenly I thought, my wife's going to be there, my kids will be there. I know what the finish line's like. I know that the last 2 miles of Brighton, in my opinion, are the best 2 miles of every marathon to finish. And suddenly that was it. I had a smile on my face. The tears had gone. And it was like, yeah, that's it. And I started to learn this technique of think happy thoughts. Whenever you get down, think happy thoughts and learn to get the rubbish ones out of your head quickly. Anyway, so I had a few more upsets with chemo. One stage I had no immune system. I had a temperature of 99, rushed in hospital, antibiotics. I couldn't sit down. I had a pain in my spine. And there's a thing with prostate cancer called spinal cord compression. And I worried I had that, and that makes you paralysed and awful, just awful. But because of that, they delayed chemo by a week, which suited me fine because it meant I was going to do the Brighton Marathon on week 2, which is when you have no immune system, but I'd kind of be slightly, in my head, be better for it. So anyway, week 2 comes and I line up for the Brighton Marathon with Jim. And Jim has said, oh, I'm just going to stay with you and forget the 4-hour thing. We're just going to stay together. And I thought, well, I'm going to try and go as fast as I can for Jim. So off we went together, and we got to about mile 12 on a 4-hour pace. But then my knee started hurting, and I realised that I couldn't run that fast anymore. Although I felt fit enough to, my knee was killing me, and we slowed down. And Brighton, you get to mile 13 by the pier, and my wife was there with my with Ollie. And I remember I got on video. I had my GoPro in my hand, and love you, Daddy, as I ran past, and it was like a massive lift. And then a girl and the guy from work had turned up. I didn't know they were coming down to support me, and that was fantastic. Another guy from work had turned up, didn't know they were going to be there, and they were running all over the place trying to see me as many times as possible. So a real buzz. And we were running in shirts like this, Prostate Cancer UK shirts. So I had one on, Jim had one on, and there was another guy, Greg. We kept on overtaking us. Didn't know him at all, but he had a shirt on because his dad had prostate cancer. And by about mile 22, we were all knackered, and we were kind of running a bit, walking a bit, running a bit, walking a bit. Jim had loads of energy, but me and Greg didn't. It was his first marathon. And we ran together, and it was great because the Prostate Cancer UK had a stand. And so if ever you're going to run a race and your charity have a stand there, know where it is and just get ready for it, because it's that visualisation again.
Yeah.
Because as we ran past, 3 of us in a line, there are not many people running things for Prostate Cancer UK. They get maybe 80 people and something like the Brighton Marathon, and suddenly for them, I know that a lift it gives them, because I've done it now for them as well, their side. 3 of us in a line, hands in the air, coming past, just amazing. Cross the finish line, the 3 of us, just the best feeling, just like my visualisation, over the moon, great. So all really happy, get home, and then a friend of my son's mum said, oh, look, I've got a bit of a snide backdoor place in the London Marathon. Do you fancy it in 2 weeks' time? So I did that. I finished in 4 hours 36. So, not bad, but 50 minutes slower than the year before, my best ever marathon. I said, yeah, I think it's great. I'll do that. So I won't say too much. I don't want to give away what happened, but we met in this place where all the proper celebrity runners were, giving our numbers by this person that was giving us numbers, me and Jim, who we shouldn't have been there. I have no idea who I was supposed to be running as, but I said, look, you can't have the chip in your shoe, because chip in your shoe will tell people that that person is running. And then, of course, when I go past and I'm not that person, then...
So, Kevin, so you did another marathon 2 weeks after.
Yeah, week 15 for Chemo.
So not to be recommended for most people, but this is telling me something. I think that do you think, did your diagnosis make you say yes to stuff, that you would, to not overthink stuff and just say yes, follow your heart? Yeah.
So before I was ill, if someone had phoned me and said, Kev, do you want to go to, in COVID, of course, I'd love to go to the pub any night of the week, but if someone phoned me and said, do you want to go to the pub, I might say, oh, Sunday night, I work tomorrow, and I say, I'll give it a miss. Now, if you phone me and ask me, I'll be there. Yeah. I don't say no to anything anymore. So, as long as it's legal, of course. And
you've got your website is Make the Most of It, and
I love that.
I really love it. Is it hard to always make the most of it?
No, not at all. Well, it was at first. So I said, I cried a lot at first, and then I gradually, at first I cried openly, then I only cried at night when my wife was asleep, so I didn't upset her, because that used to upset me, that I upset her. And now I don't cry anymore. I might get a tear in my eye if I say something that's emotional, but I don't tend to cry anymore. And so I had to do this thing. So I was with Jim again, London Marathon, fantastic race. And we set off again, and I said to Jim, we'll try and do 4-hour marathon again. And we got to mile 10, and my knee wasn't hurting, amazingly. And I said, but I can't keep this pace going, Jim. I said, but you go. You chase your dream, mate. You go and carry on. I said, it's a London Marathon, for Christ's sake. There's St John's ambulance everywhere. My wife's at the finish line. It's only London. I can get home. What's the worst? I ran a marathon 2 weeks ago. The worst that's going to happen is I'm going to stop. I'm not going to keel over and die. So you just go off. And so off he went. And that was great, because I didn't realise until that moment, he's holding him back was a weight on my shoulders. You should never, in my opinion, you should never deliberately hold someone back from their dream just to achieve your own dream. That's their choice if they want to hold themselves back, but you shouldn't be the one that's causing that. So anyway, so I carried on running and, you know, got to the finish line, and suddenly I had this panic, because I knew from London Marathon, when you get to the finish line, you cross the line, but then you have to put your foot on some box and they cut off your timing chip. And I haven't got a timing chip, have I? And then I thought, oh no, they're going to look up my number and someone's going to say, but you're, you know, I had no idea who I was going to be. I might be someone really, really famous. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get found out, I'm going to get in trouble, and, you know, all this sort of stuff. And as I run up the mile, the last 100 yards to go, over the loudspeakers, they say, because this is a 35th, I think it was, London Marathon, or 30th, we're going to let you keep your timing chip this year as a souvenir. And I was, yes, there was a God after all. I'm not going to get kicked out and not get a medal and all that sort of stuff. So it was great. But I finished that one in 4 hours 26. I was 12 minutes faster than 2 weeks before.
Brilliant.
Jim did it in 3 hours 59. So, sorry, yeah.
Just to move you away from the running, because you've done some crazy runs that would overwhelm even me. You know, you've done the Marathon Des Sables, you've done ultras. Most recently, I think tell us about the Round the World with Kev and what that was all about.
Actually, if I may, I'll do a quick story first before that. Marathon Des Sables, awesome race. Wanted to run it since I was 20, did my first half marathon. It's basically a marathon Sunday, marathon Monday, marathon Tuesday, double marathon Wednesday, marathon Friday, half marathon Saturday, in the Sahara, carrying everything on your back for a week, massive dunes, 50 degrees centigrade, wanted to do it. I did it in 2016, my second year of cancer. I did it in 2017, I did it in 2018 and 2019. I'm the only person with any T4 cancer to run that race 4 times. And then COVID comes. And so in 2020, I'd entered it to try and do it for the 5th time, and the race was called off. And this is what I've turned into. If something sets you back in life, you have a choice. Mm-hmm. All the runners on the MDS forum were all saying, oh, all that training's wasted, I can't do it. And I'm sitting there thinking, and the race was supposed to start on Sunday, and it was Wednesday, and I thought, I'm going to run it in my back garden. I'm going to prove to people that you can do stuff, even in COVID. Don't care what your problem is, you can do stuff.
Amazing.
So I mirrored the Marathon Des Sables 2019 in 2020. So I did exactly the same distance every day in my back garden. Didn't ever go on the road, just my back garden. So it was, in total, my back garden's 90 metres long, including going round the garden, down the side of the house, round the front of the house. So it's not very big, you know, it's a short garden, 18 turns per lap. So my ankles and knees struggle. You never get going because you can't get any speed up because there's all these twisty turn bits. And I loved it. I managed to get on the BBC, on BBC Breakfast. I raised £36,000 in a week.
Wow.
Wow.
And then because I was by then running every day, on Thursday, which is a day off from the Marathon Des Sables, I still had to run. So I went and did a 10K on the Thursday, having just done a double marathon on the Wednesday. And it was fantastic because I just proved to people that you don't ever give up if you want to chase your dreams. Unfortunately, fundraising-wise, a certain guy called Captain Tom suddenly on Wednesday started walking up and down his garden. And I was booked in for the BBC again, the Steph show. Oh, I got bumped by it all. They didn't want me anymore. Who wants some 55-year-old running around his garden? We're going to have Captain Tom.
Well, you've got Captain Tom.
So Captain Tom.
Bad timing.
He booted me anyway. So that stayed in my head. So we get this year, and we get to approaching Christmas. And what started my running streak was there's a running company called Ultra X who sort out some fantastic ultra marathons in great countries. I did one of theirs in 2019 in Jordan along the Wadi Run in the desert, which was a fantastic race. And in December that year, they did a run 100K in 10 days. So I entered that and did a like a virtual 100k, so in 10 days, before virtual races really existed, because why do a virtual race when you can go and do the real thing? And they phoned me up and they said, look, Kevin, you know, we understand prostate cancer, and you've done some stuff before prostate cancer with us. Do you fancy doing an event with us? We want to do this thing, run around the world with Kev. And I thought, with Kev? Why would anyone want to run around the world with me for? I bore the pants off them. And we had this conversation, should we do it Christmas Eve, Boxing Day? And in the end I said, no, let's do it New Year's Eve, because no one does anything on New Year's Eve. And I said, better still, let's do it wherever there's New Year's Eve in the world somewhere, we can run. So we had 50 hours from 7 o'clock in the morning on the 30th till midday on the 1st of January. And the night before it's going to start, we had 600 runners signed up. It was £5. All the money went to Prostate Cancer UK. So
I want to steal this idea, Georgie, for 5k your way, by the way.
Yeah, fantastic idea. We're stealing it if that's all right.
No one took any money from it. It all went to Prostate Cancer UK, which is very generous of them. So there was some costs, and they paid for all of those. We had 600 people sign up, which meant we had to do 40 miles each. It's about 24,000 miles around the world. And I was thinking, well, what can I do? And I said, well, I'll run 3 marathons in 3 days. That's my bit. Now, by now, I'm isolating because my wife's got COVID and I've had a test, but I haven't had the results back. And I'm still running every day anyway. Anyway, people started to get the idea of this. And I started saying, don't get scared off by the words Ultra X or run in the world. If all you can do is walk a mile each day, I'll have it. Pay your £5 for charity and give me 3 miles. That's good enough for me. Well, I did a marathon at 10 o'clock on the 30th. I did another one at 8 o'clock on the 31st. On the 1st of January, I did one at 1 minute past midnight. I started. And I did my first marathon of 2021 in my back garden, because by then, you know, lockdown again, 2021, around my back garden, as I you know, isolating, finished at 5:30, so it took me 5.5 hours. It was fantastic. The feedback, by then we had 1,600 people sign up. So we had another 1,000 people sign up over those 3 days. We had everyone from proper elite ultra runners sign up, all the way down to a friend of mine, Nigel, who has bowel cancer and he's got a stoma. And he said, I'm only supposed to walk a mile a day. He said, but I did 1.5 miles for you. He said, I went out and did 1.5 miles for you. I had families phone me up or send me emails saying, Kevin, thank you so much. We went out together on New Year's Eve as a family. We would never do this. We watched all the fireworks at night. So we went walking around our town, watching the fireworks. We managed to put another 8 miles each for you, and there's 4 of us. That's 32 miles for you. My friend Graham was waiting for a knee replacement, walked a marathon. Now, Graham has never walked further than probably 18, 19 miles a day in his life. He's my kind of age. And suddenly, at 56 I think he is, he's done his first ever marathon.
So this is, it sounds real. We've got a 5k your way challenge at the moment with Erdinger, and it's very similar. We've got so many uplifting stories of people getting involved, some affected by cancer. Hopefully some of the people watching and listening to this will be doing it. But my 3-year-old niece is doing it on her bike, her scooter bike, which I think my sister deserves the medal for getting around it each week. My neighbours are doing it. People, it's just a great way to get out the door, and it's so rewarding, isn't it, when you create something that gives
the
them
stories. Yeah, the stories that come in from things like this are just brilliant.
And you know, there's 2 little stories for you that were my epiphanies. So one was the day after chemo. The next was I was walking across Trafalgar Square after I'd had chemo, going to work, and on the pavement was written in chalk, you only have 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realise you only have 1. And that was it, because we all go around our lives thinking, I'll do that later, you know, it's tomorrow, that's next year, but actually, you know, that old adage, life is not a rehearsal. Life is not a rehearsal. Life is now. Life is today. So if you don't go out for your walk today or your run today because it's raining, all that means to me is you haven't got the wrong gear. There's no such thing as the wrong weather. It's just the wrong gear. And the second thing is there's a song by Julian Lennon. So Julian Lennon, John Lennon's son, released, he's a bit of a one-hit wonder, unfortunately. It's a lovely song called Saltwater in the 80s. And I love that. I've always loved the song. But like a lot of songs, I know the first couple of lines and the chorus, but I never really hear the end of it. And I was out running again on chemo, and suddenly I heard this last line, was near the end of the song, and it's, "What will I think of me the day that I die?" And I had to stop and learn how to rewind an iPod, because I don't know how you rewind an iPod, and I forgot how to play the whole song again. And I thought, that's it. On my deathbed, whenever that might be, I cannot have any regrets. I can't think about me and be cross, disappointed, ashamed of anything I've done. And I promise you, from that day onwards, from that very day, everything I have done, I try and look forward to and be right about. So I have 3 missions every day. Mission number 1, enjoy myself, but never at the expense of anyone else. Number 2, make the best memory for my family, my friends, and myself, because on that deathbed, I want to have great memories, not rubbish ones. Mm-hmm. And number 3, do something good every day. So that's my mantra. That's what I do. I hope that people who watch this aren't going to die until they're 100 and something years old. But think what that legacy will be for you to be able to look back and say, I did all these great things. So you mustn't have any regrets. You must carry on doing stuff, not just for other people, but for you as well, and get out there and love life. And that's why, you know, people say to me, how do you get through living with cancer? Why aren't you always upset all the time? And what I learned was, you plan tomorrow, today, only tomorrow. So I know tomorrow already where I'm going to run, how long I'm going to run. I've done my research. I've planned my route. Therefore, when I wake up, no matter how ill I feel, I will have something to look forward to that I will go and do. Now, you might say, well, actually, I can't run. I can only walk, or I can't even walk at the moment. Actually, I've had whatever reason. So find something today to look forward to tomorrow. It could be have a dinner that you really like. Mm-hmm. It could be that, people say to me, isn't COVID terrible, sitting there watching the same old TV. Well, find something you want to watch on TV and tell yourself you want to watch it. Tell yourself, I'm really looking forward to the Bake Off at 8 o'clock. And make yourself, look, I want to watch NCIS. Well, it doesn't matter what the program is, but mentally get yourself looking forward to it. And that way, when you wake up, you've got something to look forward to. So we all have to eat. We can all watch telly. We can all go on the internet. Find something there to do. And if you're more able, bake that cake, make that pie, knit that something, go for that walk, phone that friend, because that's something else. Again, on my deathbed, on anyone's deathbed, no one will say, I wish I posted more on Facebook. A bit more social media would have been good. No one's going to say, I wish I watched more of the X Factor. But they might say, I wish I went out and did opportunities. I wish I did more for other people. I wish I picked up my phone to the friends I already have who I haven't spoken to for ages. And in COVID, even more is that important. People now in COVID have said to me, okay, I really want to do that, but I can't because of COVID. Well, you could have done it the year before, but you didn't. You put it off. You thought you had 2 lives. COVID's kind of making people realise it's about now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you want to go and do something mega, you plan it now for when COVID lets us do it. And you make sure the day you're out to do it, you go and plan it. And don't plan it for 2027. You plan it for 2021 and you make it happen and you find a way. And if you can't do the big thing, I talked to a guy once after a presentation. He said, I want to cycle across America, blah, blah, blah. But I can't do it, married, mortgage, blah, blah. I said, well, but you're going to go to America for holiday, aren't you? Oh, yeah, we go for 2 weeks. I said, well, I'm sure your wife wouldn't mind if you had 2 days off for the bike. Leave them somewhere nice.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly. Find a way to make it happen.
Make the most.
Kevin, I think we're going to have to draw this up because we have a tendency to go on for hours and hours, and we could definitely talk to you for, we might have to get you on again.
Yeah.
But I think you epitomise the cup half full attitude. And if anyone wants to have a read, I would thoroughly recommend Kevin's website, because I was having a look through some of your blogs today, and they all, or a lot of them, have kind of positive, motivational quotes or lessons that have come from you, but they're really powerful. And I don't say this lightly. I wrote one down actually. Today is your life, the only life you're sure of. So make the most of it today. do something positive, something for you, something good, something that makes you happy, makes others smile, makes you feel alive. And then when you go to bed, look back on today and say to yourself, today I lived. And that seems how you live, Kevin. And it's so powerful. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was fantastic. I feel like we could have asked you about 10,000 more questions, but
we
ran out of time.
could.
We'll definitely have to have you again. So we'll just say goodbye to everyone listening. And there's been a few lovely comments. Thanks for all for listening. Tony, obviously, Dom, Chloe, Sarah, Leslie. Thanks so much for listening. And really lovely to have you all on. So
Kevin, Tony, he was giving you a bit of jip before, so just so you know.
It's not about the time, Tony. It's not about the time.
We'll say thank you very much for listening, and just stay on for a sec, Kevin, but we'll say bye to everyone. Thank you.